I'm reminded of a quote by an ancient Stoic philosopher. I forget if it was Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius or Seneca, but it was something to the effect of cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money, dollar dollar bill, y'all. Um, yeah, it'll come to mind who it was. However, very pertinent to my thoughts for today. I'm going to call today subcontractors, payables, receivables, and the cash flow quandary that we all run into as contractors. We are in a very unique business as contractors, and for a lot of reasons. But I think number one, because with what we do, especially as general contractors, maybe not so much as subcontractors, although they'd run into this on a smaller scale. As general contractors, over the course of a project, we're probably dealing with 20, 30, 40 vendors to get one project done. And it's impossible to think that every single one of those vendors is similar in organization, in size, in their capital resources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So historically, us contractors have this stigma about, multiple projects, rob Peter to pay Paul. We're terrible with the financials and the accounting. And in a lot of ways, it could be true depending on the size of your organization or depending on what it is you do. But I think there's ways around it. However, it's a constant battle, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. And I want to talk also about a few of the things that I do or that I've done to help mitigate the cash flow crunch and help to keep the project flowing. Because in a perfect world or on some planet that doesn't exist, owners would pay their invoices the day after you send them, and every single owner would do that. And then you would be able to just take that cash, pay everybody, pay your vendors, and move on to the next billing cycle. And then on that billing cycle, they do the same. However, that doesn't exist for whatever reason. And none of us want to be full-time bill collector harassing our clients that we're trying to build a beautiful home for to pay us immediately. We'll save that for the Kevins of the world who harass us daily or the second they finish a project for their cash. But yeah, so this is the problem I run into often is, well, let me back up. There's a scale of construction pricing, and kind of as you build a bigger organization, your construction price overall kind of scales up. So, the larger high-end builders, their price per square foot to build in general is a lot higher. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is typically because they're dealing with, let's say, air quotes, better subs. By better subs, I just mean more organized, can get the job done, and aren't going to give you a hassle. But what comes with that is a higher cost to do the work. But a lot of our clients are cost sensitive, and they don't want to just pay tip-top dollar for every single trade across the board and leave it at that. They want to get their savings where they can get it. And there's a lot of education that has to happen around that subject, because I think everyone tends to think, well, if sub X can do it for 100 grand and sub B can do it for 60, we should take the 60 because sub A and sub B should be on par if they're both drywall contractors. However, that's just not the reality. Like, sub A probably has 40 guys and they can get out there when you need them to get out there, and they're going to hold to their schedule and they're going to get it done in a timely manner. Sub B might do the same quality job. I always say quality is a given, so let's just say sub B quality given. However, it might be one guy, 3 employees. They have 2 other jobs. They're going to come, they're going to be here, they're going to be there. It's going to be sporadic, and it's not going to be as smooth as sub A. However, there's a lot of occasions where if your client's properly informed and you tell them what the speed bumps are going to be, then they'll be fine with the savings you get going with sub B, and they know there's going to be a little of a headache. However, if you don't inform them, they're going to blame those delays and those stumbling blocks on you, which is never a good look. That was a bit of an aside. I kind of went on a tangent there. However, the point of this all is one of the biggest things we face as contractors is issues with cash flow and making sure that every sub gets paid in a timely manner. And the reason that is because number one, all of our clients don't pay us immediately when we send an invoice. Sometimes we get paid 45 days after we send an invoice. Sometimes we get paid 5 days after we send an invoice. And none of us want to be pushy with our clients on getting paid quickly. I mean, although it's good business practice, it's not terrible to get paid quick. But there's also a certain visual, you don't want to be the guy that's harassing your clients for cash the second you send them an invoice. So what we end up having to do is pay. So let's say we have a pool of 10 jobs. Well, assuming we're not working with every single vendor that is the most organized, top dollar, high tier company, we have to then choose, okay, if client 1 through 10, client number 6 pays the fastest. However, on client 1 and 3 and 4's job, I have Kevin working there. In this scenario, let me back up and explain who Kevin is. Kevin is a stucco guy who runs his business out of his truck and has 3 employees. Kevin can do anything from a quick stucco patch to going to a 7,000 square foot house, Mediterranean villa style, and needs a 3-coat smooth with an acrylic finish, and obviously needs to be like tip-top quality. Kevin can do both, and Kevin's great. Kevin answers the phone when you need him. However, Kevin is going to do your job and probably not another job because he doesn't have the manpower. And another thing Kevin's going to do is the second Kevin finishes your job, Kevin's going to start harassing you 5 seconds later for full payment because Kevin needs to pay his bills, and Kevin doesn't have a war chest to pay his employees for 30 days while he waits for you to invoice your client, wait for your client to pay, you deposit the money, and then you cut him a check. Kevin can't do it. I mean, maybe Kevin can do it, but Kevin won't do it. I guarantee you that. We all know Kevins. There's lots of Kevins. So if Kevin did my job on job 1, 3, and 4, and client 6 is the fastest to pay on my first of the month billing cycle, I know I need to pay Kevin immediately, even though client 1, 3, 4 may have not paid me. And I have clients, or I have other vendors tied to client 6, but maybe a lot of them are, they have the financial wherewithal to be able to weather waiting for me 30 days, although there's weird laws like in California and other states where you're supposed to pay within a certain time you get a check from a client. Yeah, I'm sure that law was made by someone who knows the construction industry, right? Like every other kind of law and regulation in construction. Oh, I digress. But, so, I have a list of subs that I have to pay, and I need to just choose who's the loudest, who needs to get paid. Because if Kevin doesn't get paid in 3 days, he's going to file a small claim suit because that's Kevin. But anyway, I'm making myself laugh. So, managing cash flow as a builder is like a very complex thing because it's not as simple as most businesses where I do a project, I get paid, I have a few vendors that are all kind of on the same page, they have payment terms, I can pay them within their payment terms, and everyone's happy and we move on. No, it's a delicate dance of, I have 10 jobs going, I have multiple subs on every single job. Not every sub is equal when it comes to cash flow or organization. So I have to then balance who's paying me first and then who I'm paying first and who gets paid last. And a lot of that is like squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of thing. But what are you going to do? That's the reality of the business. So you're left in a scenario where you kind of have to look at everything as one whole. It's, okay, this is my monthly billing cycle. I have 10 projects. How much am I going to be bringing in? Who are the squeaky wheels? Who needs to get paid first? I need to pay our expenses through the business. Like it's this whole, wheel of chaos that we have to deal with. But it's a real issue in our business. So a few things, hopefully that rambling the explanation was, you were able to follow it. If you weren't, let me slow down and explain it again. I'll summarize what I just said. As builders, we have multiple subs. We also have multiple projects. Not every sub has the cash to pay for their materials and employees on a weekly or monthly basis. They need the money from the project that they're doing for you to pay their bills. And other subs have the cash and don't need the money quickly. So, third point, your clients don't all pay the same. I've had clients pay in 2 days after getting an invoice, and I've had clients pay in 90 days after getting an invoice. And you might say, wow, 90 days after getting an invoice, why do you put up with that bullshit? Well, the reality is, when you're building a multi-million-dollar house for somebody, you don't necessarily want to seem like you're going and whining for your money. They might just be busy. They might be out of the country. There might be a multitude of reasons. Sure, you can remind people, but as long as you have trust in the client, at least my style is, I know the money's gonna come. I don't necessarily harass for it. But in doing so, you have to decide when you're getting paid, who's getting paid the quickest to keep everything flowing and moving forward. And a lot of times that's going back to my story of the Kevins of the world get paid first because they're actually a valuable resource to you to have Kevins. A lot of times the Kevins, they are there for you because they're not a big contractor and they do a lot of your work. So these guys have like 1 to 3 builders that they'll work for, and they're pretty loyal to those guys. However, you could lose their loyalty quickly, primarily if you don't pay them super fast. So it's good to have them around. And again, the Kevins of the world could be the difference of a construction project costing $2.2 million to build compared to $3.2 million to build. You think I'm bullshitting? Think about it. Think about every category of the construction of the home, you saving 30% because you're using a Kevin. It might take a little longer, but these guys make a big difference. And not everyone has an unlimited budget to say, go hire every subcontractor that has 50 employees and can weather, waiting net 45, net 60. Yeah, your home's going to cost a lot of money. But again, I'm all over the place here. So we have to make the decision and we have to play the game. But a few things that I've done and kind of coming up, like, what's the number one thing you can do to mitigate all this and not have to, every pay cycle do this cash flow balance and figure out, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay the sub bills? How am I going to pay vendors? How do you mitigate that? Well, number one, cash flow. Save money as you get it. Keep it in the bank, and then you can utilize that cash flow to, float the bills as needed, and you're not so dependent on owners paying your bills immediately. So that's number one. However, if we're getting into the nuts and bolts of billing, my mantra and how you should work as a builder is that you're not the bank. When you do a project for somebody, the correct process is, I get paid, I deposit the money, I pay all my vendors. However, it doesn't work like that, and oftentimes you are the bank. And the funny thing is, go back, try to describe that process to one of your subs if they haven't gotten paid for a couple weeks and they're the Kevins of the world that need to get paid immediately. Hey, look, I'm waiting for the owner to pay me so I can pay you. I try to keep this podcast clean, but I would say Kevin will say, go fuck yourself. That's probably what's going to happen. Probably. Definitely. So, cash flow. Keep a good enough war chest so you could easily wait for your clients to pay your vendors, keep the project moving. Another thing, oftentimes we have vendors that can give us terms, payment terms of, maybe my lumber yard has net 45 for payment, or actually my lumber yard, the exact thing they give me is that it's a net 30. If I want it to be net 60, it's 1% on top of my total balance. And then if I want it to go net 90, they charge me another 1%. So in a lot of scenarios, in one cycle, I could easily run up 6 figures of bills on my lumber account. And sometimes it's not bad if I'm waiting for owner invoices to get paid to go and roll that over into a net 60, maybe even a net 90, although I don't like to get that far out. But the net 60, paying $1,000 on a $100,000 lumber bill, 1%, that'd be a 1% fee. It's not terrible. If you could roll that over for 30 more days, you're guaranteed, you're likely going to get paid most of your invoices from your owners by then. And then you could utilize that cash flow to kind of float some of these vendors along. And then the third thing that was super helpful to me is getting a card like an American Express. I don't like to do credit cards where I can keep a balance. I think it's because my natural inclination is to just let the balance roll. And I just know that about myself. So I like cards that I have to pay off on a monthly basis. So what I'll do is I'll get like a American Express Platinum card. That's a great one. Or I just recently got the Capital One Spark card. And they give you, a lot of times they'll give you a very high balance monthly as long as you pay it off. Or they start you low and you have to incrementally build up your credibility with them. And then they'll quickly raise your balance. But you have to pay it off monthly. However, that monthly doesn't mean, oh, in 30 days it gets paid off, like the 30-day schedule. It actually gives you like 52 days to pay off your credit card. So you can go, well, it depends on where you hit it in the cycle. If you hit it on day one of the cycle, you have 52 days to pay off that card. So almost 2 months to pay off your American Express or whatever card is like that, which is super helpful because you could put all of your vendors and materials and you get the added benefit with those cards of getting points. So that helps kind of ramp your cash flow and push it along the line to make sure everyone's getting paid on time. Because the reality is the foot soldiers and the boots on the ground are your subcontractors, and they're the ones who keep the project moving. It's not the lumber yards and the material suppliers that they have these established credit accounts, and that's why they're charging you the 1%. They don't care. They're going to get paid, and if they charge you 1%, they're either making a little money or they're just paying whoever's supplying them credit the 1% to hold a balance. So, you paying a lumberyard net 60 or some of your other vendors net, whatever it is, and utilizing that capital to pay off your vendors, like your subcontractors that are in the field working on the project, is a lot more beneficial because the people working on the project, the subcontractors running their businesses with men or women in the field, are the ones that are going to push your project along and are the ones that are going to pay you the most dividends. So, that's what I found is a good way to keep the balance in line. And yeah, I think, those three things, again, number one, just capital. If you can save cash and have a war chest to be able to pay your vendors when needed without having to rely on immediate payments from your clients, amazing. If you can utilize vendors' accounts, net 30, 60, 90 to pay your vendors a little later so you have more cash to pay your subs until you get client invoices paid, or some kind of strategic credit card, that's going to have the added value of giving you points too that you can go use for, some stuff for employees in your company, travel, personal, dinners, whatever. It's a nice thing to have.